Oh my goodness, guys. I have an awesome, awesome speaker for you today. Her name is Jenna Farmer, and she does PR. Yes, PR for business owners. And I know how epic she is. Why? Because all of this year, she's been helping me with my PR, right? So I knew I had to get her on here. But also, when I heard about her story and how she got into PR and the fact that she's a mother, a wife, a daughter, and handling all these things. She's wearing all the hats, not only in her business, but in her personal life too. I knew I had to get her on here because we are going to dig deep when it comes to Jenna, what she does, and how she's managing it all. Oh my goodness, Jenna, I am super excited to have you here.
Hi, Kay. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of PR, right? Because I know everybody wants to know about PR. I would love for you to share with our audience a little bit about your background, like how you got to this point. And of course, I know your story, right? But no one else does. And we're like, we need to get it out there, right? Now, I would love for you to tell people about the ups and downs, right? The kind of little twists that's been going on and how you actually ended up in PR and working with so many business owners.
So, my journey into PR was quite random. So, I used to be a teacher many years ago, and I actually was living in China teaching English. You
Wait, I didn't know nothing about that bit. Oh
just
my
said
goodness. Right. Okay. So clearly there's bits here that I'm missing as well. All right. So you're living in China. How long ago was that?
so I went there in 2012, and then I come home in 2015.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So what happened in China?
Yeah, so it's relevant to the story because I was teaching English in China and I suddenly became really ill, and I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And so it was really hard. I mean, anyone that has a chronic illness knows how hard it is. But because I was also living abroad and I didn't really have, I'd got my husband, but I didn't have any other sort of support network. I didn't know anyone else that had got the illness. So I started to write a blog about my experiences, like the medication I was taking, and like even like traveling insurance, all the different things that I was trying to get my head around understanding. And when I came back to England, so I came back in 2015, that blog had started to gain like an audience and people had started to follow and read along. But it was a year or so later where it really took off. I had to have an operation, and on the way to an operation, I wrote an article. And when I woke up, my mom had said like it had gone viral, it was like picked up by the media. So I just saw like firsthand really how much the media could absolutely change the direction of your life because it happened to me. Um, I was suddenly like I'd got loads more followers and like I was offered like a deal to write a book, and I was able to leave teaching, not just from that one piece of press coverage. I was getting more interest. I then got a job writing a regular column for Metro, and then I was just able to leave teaching and do that, be the media expert that I help other people be now. So writing about my condition and having a chronic illness. And I did that for quite a few years. And then eventually, like so many people were asking me, especially because I had a bit of a non-traditional route, people were saying to me, like, how can you do that for me? Like, you have just started to write and people recognize you as that person that talks about chronic illness and Crohn's disease and diet and all of those sorts of things. Can you do that for me? And that is how really just like step by step I became a PR.
Oh my goodness. Just out of the blue. It wasn't planned or anything. You kind of like just fell into it, right? Now, now I'm just assuming, right? Because this was just something that you fell into, that when you found this path, that you found that you actually liked it, that you found a passion for it. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I loved it because, one thing that I'd always growing up wanting to like work in the media in some way, but it wasn't as accessible as it is now. Like it sounds silly, but like being from Birmingham, like far away from London, not having any contacts. Now like the media's really spread out and I love that you can just reach out to a journalist. But back then everything was very London centric and it was based on who you knew. So it sort of didn't feel that possible for me. So I absolutely love it. But I also absolutely love showing people just like me that maybe feel like, they don't know anyone, they don't know how to get started, how to do it. And I think that it has become so much more accessible now because of the internet, because of social media, that anyone can reach out to a journalist and start a conversation, and that can transform their whole business, which is what I just absolutely love.
Definitely. Oh my goodness. All right. So, oh, I got so many more questions for you, Jenna, right? But before we kind of go in that direction, there was something that you mentioned earlier that I want to bring to everyone's attention, right? You mentioned that you found out you got Crohn's,
Yeah.
right? First of all, what does that mean for the audience that are listening that are not too sure what that means, right? And how did that affect your life or your business or being a teacher? Like, what had to change when you found that out?
So it's an autoimmune disease. So it's when basically the immune system like attacks itself. So in my case with Crohn's, it attacks the digestion system, but you can have other autoimmune diseases that attack various parts of the body. But mine attacks the digestive system, like causing pain and lots of discomfort and all other sorts of symptoms. Um, it made a lot of sense in many ways because I'd had symptoms for something like 12 years until I got diagnosed. So in one
Oh,
way, it sort of was a clarity moment that I wasn't actually just like really ill all the time. I actually had a condition. Um, so in one way, that was really good. But I also don't think that many careers are compatible with chronic illness. So like when I came back to England, like it's really, if you're in pain and you're in the middle of teaching 30 teenagers, a novel, you can't just stop and say, I just need 5 minutes to meditate, or I need 5 minutes to have a cup of tea. Like, so that was
right.
really hard. And I didn't feel that having a chronic illness was compatible with teaching. So it definitely forced my hand, but I'm just so grateful it did force my hand to leave teaching and do what I do because I absolutely love it. But yeah, it definitely made it a lot harder to sort of stay in traditional employment.
Okay, so it kind of fell on your lap at the right moment,
Yes,
right?
definitely.
Going into PR. So it was like the universe kind of saying to you, right, okay, this has now happened. We're going to send you in a different direction. It's not going to work now, right? So that I see, I love stories like that. That's amazing. Now, I know you also have a son, right? You're married, you have a husband as well. PR, it's not for the light-hearted. Right? It really isn't. Like working with you this year, I have seen how much you're doing and the stuff that you're posting on social media. And you've got several clients and you're finding them publications to be on. And even the stuff that you sent to me is like, I need this. I'm like, holy crap. Like this is a lot, right? But how do you, right? And we had this kind of conversation off camera before we got on. But how do you manage PR, right? That is so heavy. You got so much things to do, right? A lot of back and forth with journalists and press and clients and all that kind of stuff. And have a little one that you're taking care of, and a husband, and yourself, clients. Like, how do you juggle all of that?
I mean, on the one hand, what I do love about PR, as you know, it's not a 9 to 5. So, sometimes if I sit in my office 9 to 5, then I finish. If at 10 past 5, like Forbes emails me, I'm going to reply. And I think that if you've got that sort
Whoa,
of
whoa,
person,
whoa, whoa. Hold on. I got to stop you there. Guys,
just
did you hear what she just said? Like, she just kind of went really far. Oh, yeah, when Forbes emails me, right? Like, that's a big deal, right? The fact that you've got contacts in Forbes, right, is a huge deal. Sorry, I had to point that out because you just went really fast on saying that. But okay, so when they email you, what happens?
so for me, I just get like such a high, like I get so excited to be doing it where, a lot of the stuff that I am doing with PR, it's not me sitting down 9 to 5, but it's something that I want to get the amazing coverage for my clients, and that just gets me so excited. But be so helpful to journalists and just sort of be known as that person, and that's really important to me because what I've never had, like I know there's lots of PRs that are like, let's go out for drinks and like that's not my style of PR. I don't live in London. I can't just go out with meet journalists for coffee. So I just need to focus on creating some really good stories. And, when you mention Forbes, the only way I did that was just finding on the internet, right, who writes for Forbes? I'm going to drop them an email. I'm going to let them know XYZ. Like, I don't have any best friends that work with for Forbes. I just persisted. And I think that's probably, if you ask me a tip later on, it is about that persistence. So it is a juggle, but as my business has got slightly bigger, I've been able to let go of some things. So that's definitely something I want to do more of next year. But I do have someone that helps me like a day a week with things like my newsletter and like the admin side of things and like customers changing bank details, all those sort of admin things that you get. So I do get out some help there. I'm lucky that I have a 5-year-old that is pretty flexible where I can do bits and pieces when I need to. But it is a juggle, but it is a juggle that I just absolutely love. And I would just not want to take any of those things out of my life. So
Oh my goodness, I love that. And you're so good at this and you're so good at organizing. Like, it still blows my mind. But talking about now PR.
yeah.
See, before I met you, I didn't realize, right, how important PR is or what kind of things and doors of opportunity it can actually bring to you, right? I knew there's PR out there and I've met loads of people that do PR, but I never really understood it until I met you. Now, I would love for you to explain or even give us some kind of showcases or case studies as to what is actually done for your clients. Because again, I've been blown away with things where you've got me as being one of the panel judges at a big awards, right? In the UK, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't even know this was a thing, right? Like, you've done so much great things. So I would love you to share like what kind of things it can actually do and what it's done for your clients, just so it gives an insight to people that they really need to get into PR.
There's so many different things. Like if you've got a product business, then the obvious one is that you want to sell more products. So I completely get
Mm,
that. So, for some clients, I've had there's not a winning formula. Like, we don't know that 10 pieces of coverage are going to make 100 more sales. So you have to bear that in mind, like any sort of business activity. But for product businesses, one of the biggest benefits is more sales. And sometimes that is an instant like flurry, like you get an article and you get a big flurry within 24 hours. But I always give the example of one person that worked with me. It must have been about 4 years ago now, and she just did like a 1 hour session with me, and she was in the Independent in like the top 10 buying something, and she said to me that even today most of her new customers come from that one article, which is insane. So people forget, just like the SEO and all the other stuff that we're doing SEO with blogs and even podcasts and things like that, if that article is something that people are Googling, you're going to get almost like a passive, like steady stream of customers that she's had to do nothing for. She's not even done that much more PR. And she's just, from that one article, she's got a steady stream of customers. So I think if you have a product, getting into those like buying guides, those shopping guides, those reviews, that can just have such an impact on your sales. With service businesses, it doesn't always work in that direct way. Like for example, if someone saw you as a podcasting expert in a magazine, they might not stop everything, get their credit card out and work with you in a 10K
mm,
program straight away. Just like we know in life, most of the time if someone follows us on Instagram, like I did an Instagram boost a few weeks ago, and most people that followed me haven't purchased anything yet because they're going to follow me. Hopefully they're going to jump onto my email list. So it all takes a bit more time when we've got like higher value offerings that aren't like snap decisions. But the benefits it's had there is, first of all, simply just getting more people to the website. So I had one client that was in The Guardian, and that day she had like 1,000 new people on her website. So simply getting more people to your website, seeing your freebie, buying your product or just connecting with you can really help. But also like all the other opportunities, it's about that like trust and authority and that stamp of approval. Like I had one client that was in the Times, and a whole business has just changed thanks to that article, which is crazy to me. But from that, she's had like a book deal that isn't announced yet, but
wow.
I won't say who it is. But she's like with a big publisher, like a celebrity podcast, like all these different opportunities. And I think people forget that people are looking. So it's not just about customers, which also, I mean, I think she gained like 3,000 Instagram followers from that article, but it's also other people are looking, like the publishers, people that want speakers. I've had a client that was invited to Parliament to things, another that was the face of like a brand campaign. So it's not just about the customers that are looking, other people are looking, whether that's other PRs, journalists, experts, people that want speakers, all of those other things. And that is, you know, really powerful. And then with the sales, I've had clients say to me, because sometimes if it's in a print magazine, for example, let's say that you're in Metro newspaper, you can't track who comes from that. So it's a little bit trickier because you can't see who's clicked that link. But I've had people say that, you know, they've booked on a course and said, oh, I saw your article and I just knew that you were like the real deal or you were the right person. And it's all about helping those buying decisions. And it's, on the online world, I think we are worried about like getting scammed or someone not being who they say they are. So when you see those like stamps of authority from the big newspapers and the magazines, it just gives you that reassurance that you're investing in the right person.
Oh my goodness. So many golden nuggets right there, right, Jenna? Now, the biggest thing I've taken away from what you just mentioned is not all about sales. Other people are actually looking, right? Other maybe journalists, other podcast, whatever it may be, right? To looking to collaborate, to work with you, to have you speak at the awards or be a judge at the awards. Like there's all sorts of people, and I think we forget about that because as businesses, we're just looking at we need clients, we need more leads, so we're always looking at the clients and the sales rather than everybody else, right? So that to me is super, super key. And I think one of the other things that I've realized working with you this year is that PR isn't just about being in the Times, in the Metro, right? Or Grazia or whatever it is. It's about just being visible and getting out there and getting known, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. And so PR doesn't mean you'll just be in print. Doesn't mean you're just going to be doing an article online. It means going out to different places like the awards, right, to gain visibility, to gain traction, to be known, right, in your industry. So this is super, super awesome. I love all this. Now, when it comes to, you've mentioned again as well, that you've had a client where they've got a book deal, right? Like, and I feel like it's one of those things where you got to try several different articles, and it's that one that might get the attention. How do you find that one article that's going to get the attention?
I think, I mean, sometimes it's the first one, but often it's not the first one. So that client, you know, I've worked with them for a few years now, and it's been so lovely because when I started working with them, they were like new to the UK and like they hadn't got any sort of visibility. So to see them go from that to this has just been
Ah,
incredible. But um, part of it as well is actually figuring out the right story. So, you know, this wasn't the first story that we told for that client. You know, we told other stories before. So sometimes when you're doing your own PR, it's thinking about, okay, I've told this story, let's try a different story, whether that's like your personal story, your business story, your expertise. It's about trying different things. I always say with like publications, like we just don't know. Like you said, you know, sometimes someone might be in Forbes, but then actually being in a local paper is what someone sees. You know, so many of us read our local papers still, and that is what makes someone reach out. So you don't know until you try different things. I think that we sometimes get carried away with like the top tier publications and think if I could just get in that, everything's going to change. But I've had some people that have been in local papers and actually got more traction from it. But again, it's like all sorts of things, you know, whether it's podcast, social media, it's about that experimenting. But I think as well that what I have found is like a momentum effect. So when you get a few pieces of coverage, people see it, it gets easier. So even if the first piece of coverage doesn't do that, it's sometimes easy to get the second piece, or a journalist might even read it and get in touch with you. And it's all about that cumulative effect, as opposed to like spending ages thinking which is going to be the one that changes my life and just doing that one article.
right. See, Again, this is something that people don't realize, right? Is getting that momentum. Just because you put one or two articles out there doesn't mean that that's it, you're going to now blow up, right? Or even going for the big names, right?
Yeah,
And it's exactly what I say about podcasting. You don't need to be on the big podcasts. Get on the
yeah.
smaller podcasts, and they work really, really well. So I love that, Jenna. I love that. That's awesome. Now, for people that are kind of like, okay, can I do it myself, or do I need a PR agency to do this for me? What would you recommend people that are looking into PR but are not too sure?
I think it always comes down to two things. So I always say, like, I never want to make anyone feel like they can't do it themselves. You know, I have a membership that's like £35 a month, and people are getting, like, someone was in Forbes just from that membership. So it's
Wow.
not just about you know, how much you pay is sort of the results you get. It just comes down to two things, like time. With the
Mm,
PR, the consistency is being able to email journalists on a weekly, if not daily basis, really. So that is what a one-to-one PR is doing for you. They are doing all those pitches for you. The stuff they're saying is stuff that you could probably say, like, you know your story, you know your expertise, you know what your values are and what you can help journalists with. But they're doing that consistently. They're following up with journalists. They're making sure they've got it. They're checking, have I got the right contact? Let's try another publication. It's all that day-to-day stuff. So I just say to people, you need to ask yourself, how much time do you have to dedicate to PR? If it's consistent, you can do it each day, even if it's only 10 to 15 minutes a day, then you can
ah,
absolutely try yourself. Um, because then the next thing is going to obviously be your budget. So obviously, because PR is so hands-on, and like I said at the start, even, you know, like over Christmas and things like that, of course I'll try and take a break, but if I see the perfect opportunity, I'm not going to delete it. I'm going to, so it is hands-on, and you've got someone in your corner 24/7. It is expensive compared to lots of services, so then you have to weigh those things up. So I just say to people, it depends on your budget, but your time and the consistency, that is the key thing. So looking at your working week, can I fit this into my working week every single week? Because what we don't want to do is like build a relationship with the journalist and then like forget to email them, mess them about, miss the deadline. With
mm,
That's the thing that is a big problem, because they won't come back to you again.
right. Okay, that's good to note down. Now, for a beginner, right, that wants to go into PR, first of all, actually, maybe mention a couple of things that you see people doing as maybe new into PR, completely wrong, and it's frustrating. And I mean, what are some of those things that you see time and time again that people are doing completely wrong, and what should they be doing instead?
Well, I think the first thing is actually before they've even started PR, a lot of people feel like they've got to tick some boxes first. So, like, I've got to be earning six figures, I've got to have so many followers. Or the most obvious one is like, oh, I don't have a dramatic story. Like, I don't have a rags to riches
Ah,
story. I don't have a. So they feel like they're not interested enough. And I think uh, a lot of people don't realize that sometimes PR can be really mundane. Like, you know, I've been seeing things today like, does anyone know when's the right time to put up a Christmas tree? Like, that was a request I saw today, like a very
right.
simple thing. Like, honestly, the state of my emails that I get from journalists sometimes, a lot of the stuff that journalists need help with is the everyday experience. Of course, if you've got a dramatic life story, that could be a way in, but you don't need one. And you also don't have to tell it. Like, if it's something that's upsetting to you, it's traumatic, then don't tell it. Don't feel as if you the only way that you can get in the media is by, you know, making yourself uncomfortable and telling a
Right.
story that you don't want to tell. So I think that's the biggest one. And then the other one is people, they forget that the idea of PR is we are offering value to journalists. Like, I never mind following up, emailing, because I know I've got such good clients who are brilliant at what they do. So they're helping the journalists. It's not about us selling ourselves. It's not
Mm,
about hoping the journalist is going to buy from us. So you have to change that, because a lot of people will write a pitch like in the second person, like, you do want to get fit this summer, and they're like, no, like, I want you to be able to help our readers. So just having that mindset shift of, this is really valuable for the readers. I want to think about the journalist is looking for something that's quick, helpful, easy. I'm going to make their life easier, rather than sending them a sales pitch, rather than just, you know, sending them, if you've got a course, that can't be the story. Like, here's 5,000 words on my course. Let's
Okay.
like, like you, like I'm an expert in podcasting. Like, here's 5 tips to start in podcasting. Here's
Mhm.
my course link. So you have to. Your story can't just be like, look how good I am and all the things I've got. It's like, what value can we offer to the journalist? And I think if you can just do that one thing, I honestly don't think it's very hard. If you can just change it to helping the journalist with their requests, they're always going to need help. So it's not as complicated as it seems when you do that thing.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So again, it's just let's just keep it simple. People are just overcomplicating it, right? As human beings, we're really great at that, right? So it's just really keeping it simple. I love that. Now, I guess when you got to do the pictures, I think this is where people get confused at, right? The pitching, right? How do you pitch? And in fact, I did see a social media post that you did around that, right? Which I thought was genius, right? And I'm not going to give too much away right now, but I would love for you to share with us a little bit about how should we be pitching?
So the key thing, there's only a few things that you need to do. The first thing is obviously like your subject header. So I read a stat once that only 3% of pitches to journalists get a reply, which obviously sounds not great, but
Yeah.
that is not my experience. You can absolutely get a much higher success rate, but I just mention it because the reason for that is not because 97% of them are rubbish, it's because journalists are getting hundreds and thousands of emails a day. So the easiest thing that you can do is create a subject header that's not like clickbaity, not like this is the biggest thing that you need to know, nothing like that. That is really clear about your story, just in a sentence. So and also is something maybe they can search. So I've got to do the PR for a brain expert. So I would put that in the subject header, like brain expert, 5 things you must do this Christmas to reduce your risk of stroke, for example. So
Okay.
from that subject header, I've said really clearly what I'm emailing them about. So I'm not wasting their time.
Hmm.
Then I've also got some keywords in there. So even if they're not working at that right now, they probably, well, we all remember random things at certain times. So if in a few months they're like, did I just get an email from a brain expert? They can just, use the search header. So the easiest thing to do is to just make sure that your subject header just clearly sums up what the article's about. We don't want to just put like article idea, pitch suggestion, because
Mhm.
we're relying on them opening it and then it's not relevant to them. So that's a really simple thing. But then when you email, the only 3 things you have to do, I say, is first of all, tell them who you are, not in a
Yeah.
like I think in the online world sometimes we overcomplicate things. Like, just call yourself, usually you're an expert of something. So for you, I'd
Mhm.
say podcast expert. I know there's so much more to what you do, like video podcasting and all these different things, but for most people in that original email, that's all they need to know. You're just a podcast
Right.
expert. So let's keep it simple, because I think we forget as well, like there's so many terms that we understand, but then a magazine might not. So if you was like a funnel and launch specialist, like we'd probably all know what that was. But if you
Mhm.
were pitching that to a newspaper, they'd be like, "What's a funnel?" So you might call yourself like
Ah.
a market expert. It's the exact same thing, really. But we just have to think about making clear who we are, just in a few lines, not overcomplicated. They just need to get a sense of why you're the best person for this, like why you're the right person to speak to them. And then you just tell them like what your idea is. So like what you can do for them, whether that's like, I've got an idea for a story, I've got a quote for you, whatever that is. And then we always finish by just letting them know like how you can help them. So, like for example, here's a link to my website if you want some pictures, or like here's an example of an article I've written before. Give me your address if you want me to send over samples, whatever that is. And so the journalist is really clear about like who you are, and like what you do, what your idea is, and how you can help them, and just keep it really simple. So it doesn't really matter who you're emailing and what you're
Mhm.
emailing about if you can just answer those few questions.
I love that. I love that. Awesome. That was awesome, Jenna. So, okay, what I guess are some of the things that people should be looking out for? So we covered that, it can be the smaller publications, it doesn't have to be the big places. And we covered that, okay, what is the right way of pitching? What are some of the things that I guess people are unaware of right, or not too sure about, that I think that you probably feel like it should be brought to their attention a little bit more around PR?
I think that it's just understanding like what a journalist is looking for. So I think that one of the reason why I get lots of success with some of my clients is if I know that someone is looking for like one paragraph on XYZ, I just send them one paragraph on XYZ, which sounds really obvious, but I think a lot of people try and think, well, I'll send them 5 paragraphs because then I'll look better. Actually, I don't actually agree with the way they've suggested it. I'm going to give them a different angle. And I think because I also used to do some journalism, I understand about like the restrictions. Like sometimes journalists are just writing about random stuff, like when you should put your Christmas tree up. Now,
Right.
you send them an email like, actually, it's not, it doesn't matter, like that's what they're writing about. So if you could just make sure that you understand that sometimes the journalist has got a specific brief, whether that is like a topic, even if it's a topic that you don't, agree with. Let's say the topic was something like why you don't need a podcast. Obviously, you'd be like, hello, you do need a podcast. But that's the question that they're asking you. So you either don't answer it or you give it them. So understanding they've got a brief, they've got something they have to do, often because of SEO or like, the editor wants it or people are searching for it, and understanding like how you fit into it. So I think a lot of people don't read magazines as much as they used to anymore. So, I get so many people like, I want to be in Grazia, and they tell me something, and I think that would never be in Grazia. Like, maybe it's the wrong age group, or maybe they just don't do, like Grazia doesn't do a lot of real life maybe. So when you're telling me like a whole real life story, I'm thinking Grazia is more about opinions and discussion. So it's about, so many people just don't realize just reading publications will really help you, take that next step, because when you understand what the journalist actually wants, then it just becomes
Right.
so much easier. So, like if you want to be in Forbes, for example, you need to look at the style of that journalist writing. You need to look at the sorts of things that she covers. You know, if you notice that all of her articles start with like 5 tips for XYZ, then you're going to give her some tips. But then if you notice that everything that she does is like real life, then you're going to give her real life, for example. So it takes more time, but the success rate is so much higher if you just take that time to like read and research and just personalize it in some way.
Yeah. See, I love this because it's very similar to the podcast pitches, right? Where
Right.
you just want to be straight to the point, right? You don't want to have like pages and pages of all this stuff about you because, like journalists, right? Podcasts as well don't have the time to go sifting and reading through all of that. So it's to the point, make sure it grabs their attention, a little bit about you. And I feel like pitching, just like the way you said on that social media post, pitching to journalists is just like when you pitch in sales, when you're pitching to podcasts, when you're pitch, is all the same. And we want to make sure you're not sending them essays long pitches, email or on social media messaging because people just won't read it, right?
And it's like, if you were going to pitch on a podcast, you would probably say, make sure you look at the podcast first, like check the post out on Instagram, have a look at the episode titles, even if you're not going to listen to them, like maybe just have a listen to the first 10 minutes or something so you get an idea of the style. And it's just like that with the magazines as well. Like if you pitch to a podcast that has never covered that topic because it's the wrong audience, you're not going to get a reply. And it's just the same with the publications as well. Like if you pitch
Yeah.
something they're not going to cover and you haven't had the time to have a look, you're just wasting your time, really.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I know people are probably thinking at this point, well, this is great information, but where do I go and find these journalists to pitch? So, where would you suggest that they go?
Again, it's not that difficult now, so it really would depend. So like Twitter, and I know that people are leaving Twitter and going to
Mm,
Blue Sky, the
yeah.
new but both of those I believe have like you can search for a hashtag. So the hashtag journo, JOURNO, request as one word.
Mm.
Journalists often use that to put messages out there like, hi, I need a Christmas tree expert or whatever it is. And so that's something that you can do really simply. But
Mm.
again, if you have got a particular publication in mind, like let's say, for example, like Business Insider, you can go and you can Google Business Insider, you can start reading it. if you read an article and you think, oh, that sort of really aligns with what I want to talk about, you can click on the journalist's name and then it will show you like other things they've written, which is really helpful. And a lot of publications now will give you either their like Twitter, their Instagram, or their email address. So a lot of the times these are things that are like, you know, publicly listed. And I said this like in my membership, you know, people saying I want to be in Forbes. Have you gone onto Forbes and found a writer and see if you could find your email address? Because we did it as a challenge and it took people like 5 minutes in my membership. But
Oh,
you
wow.
think, oh, like I wouldn't be able to find someone that writes for Forbes. But you just go onto Forbes, you start reading, you find someone that's in the right section. Then you know, click on their name, see if you can find their Twitter. So it does take a bit of time, but it's all out there. And I think that's what people don't realise. They assume that it's all sort of hidden and a secret.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, because a lot of people don't know that it's as simple as that, right? They all think, oh, you do need to build a relationship with them, but you need to have been in the PR industry long enough, right, to be able to reach out to them and for them to even stop and listen and want to know what you have to say, right? So that is really, really awesome. Now, a little birdie tells me, Jenna, that you have a little freebie for everyone that's listening.
Yeah, so if you're feeling like that you want to take those next steps, I have just a really simple email sign up that will give you 5 publications that has like their pitching guidelines. They're all business publications, so relevant to anyone that wants to target like entrepreneurs or business owners. And it will just tell you like this is where you can find their guidelines. This is how you can reach out. So if you just want something really simple and actionable to do, then it could be worth just getting the list.
Oh, I love that, guys. Look, go ahead and download this free gift. It's completely free. It's going to give you more information. And also, you did hear Jenna talk about her membership. If you're interested, make sure you do and connect with her. Now, Jenna, if people want to connect with you on social media, where can they go to connect?
So I have a few different things. I have Instagram is at Jenna Farmer PR, so that's nice and simple. My Facebook group is called Get Your Business in the Media with Jenna Farmer. And then I also have a podcast called PR in Your Pocket, which Kay has been on, and also has lots of just like quick and easy PR tips. So that's on the usual like Spotify, Apple, and all the other podcast places.
Oh, awesome. All right, guys, go and follow her. Follow her everywhere, right? Go and learn what Jenna knows because you're going to need it for your business. And the more that you're able to understand PR, the better it's going to be for you. Because I know I've learned so much from Jenna this year, right? It's been awesome. Jenna, I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you for coming on and giving so many golden nuggets in such a short amount of time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Make Your Mark podcast at www.makeyourmarkpodcast.com. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get this and every other episode that comes out. We have lots of great stuff coming, so make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss it. And thank you in advance for all the reviews and comments. I appreciate it so much, and I look forward to serving you in next week's episode.